Hi, Henry. Welcome to the show.
Good day. How are you, John?
I'm doing just fine. What part of the United States are you in right now?
I'm in South Florida, Hollywood, Florida.
Oh, cool. Cool. Must be right. Nice weather there, or we're
Beautiful.
past the hurricanes now, are we?
Yeah, there may be a couple more stewing out there, but you know what? This from October to April, my favorite time because it's not as hot and humid and the
Hmm.
weather gets nicer and it's beautiful. So this is starting to the fall is starting to be my favorite.
Nice, nice. We're going to be talking about a book that you did not write. It was your father who wrote it, and now you're in the process of publishing it. This is quite unique for my show.
Yes, you are correct. I
Okay.
I don't think I could write something that good.
Okay. Well, before we get to that, because you sound like a fascinating person, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for a living, and how you got to the point where you've picked up your father's book and now are publishing it? And what's this all about? Tell us all about that.
Right. So I'm pretty much an entrepreneur. I've spent most of my life doing business, building businesses. I produced game shows in Latin America. I used to do travel films, and recently I sold a tech company. Which, if you go to any travel website, you see pictures of hotels. They generally came from my old tech company, the one I sold. So 40 years ago, after graduating college, I moved to Los Angeles, and my sister's helping my dad move. And she reads this manuscript that was in the garage, and she asks him, and he says, "It's a love story. I wrote this tribute to a friend." And she said, "Dad, love story? This, doesn't make sense, but can I read it?" Right? So she reads it and she loves it, right? She calls me up and she says, "I know you're in LA and you're trying to get into the movie business. You got to read this book. It's amazing. Daddy wrote it." And I'm like, "Daddy? Love story? Come on, please," right? And so she sends me the manuscript and I read it and I was in tears. I loved it. So I called dad and I said, "What are you doing with this?" And he says, "Well, I wasn't really planning on anything." He was an author, by the way, but he wrote travel books and archaeology type books. No love stories, nothing fancy passion thing, right?
Right, right.
And so I called him up and I said, "What are you doing with this?" And he says, "Well, nothing. It was really a tribute for a friend." And I'm like, "Okay, can I buy the rights?" And he said, "Sure." And I said, "Because I want to make it into a movie." And so I buy the rights. Life gets in the way. I call a partner of mine, or not a partner, I call a friend who was producing a movie. And I said, "Listen, you got to read this because I feel somewhat nepotistic. This is something my dad wrote, and I think it's really good, but hey, it's my dad, right? Can you read it?" He says, "Sure, but not now because I'm in the middle of making a movie." I said, "All right, take your time." 3 days later, he calls me up. He says, "This is amazing. We have to do this." I'm like, "Done." He ends up, going a different direction because the distribution got screwed up. I end up going to Latin America to produce game shows, but we stayed in touch. I said, "One day we're going to do this." Now, keep in mind, over 40 years ago, the world was completely different with movie production and distribution. The world has changed with the streamers and the new options now. And so instead of a movie, I think it would make a great TV series. So dad passed 14 years ago. I sold my business a few years ago and I decided, Doug, we're going to now make it into a series for streaming. So when we finish the pilot, I'm going to publish the book, which I just did, gain some awareness, and then pitch this concept for a show on TV. And that's how we got here.
Okay. I've been thinking recently, my wife and I, we watch Prime, Netflix, Paramount, all kinds of things we subscribe to. We're senior citizens, so we spend time in front of the TV every night, and we watch something. There's a lot more TV series being released than movies. Now, I worked in both movies and TV, and I think a TV series makes more sense because you can spread it out over a longer period of time. And correct me if I'm wrong, is it less expensive to make a television series that streams than a full movie?
Generally speaking, I mean, obviously, a lot of factors, and you well know, come into play, like the cost of the actors
Mhm.
and the, above the line, the producers and directors, the location. And so the reality is for us is we wanted to do a much deeper dive into the characters. This is about
Yes.
reincarnation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so we do not just the life of Marie, who actually existed, but the people in her circle, her family and friends, and then how they interact and interrelate in the future with the current protagonist's life. So doing that in a movie is much harder because you're generally limited to an hour and a half, 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
In a series, you could go on and really go deep into those characters and how they play with each other. And if it's well received, those characters can easily go into a season two and beyond. Even if it's a reincarnation, they can get reincarnated into any time and place in history. So
Yep.
you have more flexibility. And I also think that people who, I'm like you, I watch TV with my wife and we'll watch a series. If we watch a movie, it's great. It's like one and done, right?
Yeah.
If I
hmm
watch a series, it can entertain me for a while,
Yes.
weeks, if
For
not
sure.
longer,
For
depending
sure.
on what it is. And so I prefer getting involved with a good series that has a great plot line and twists and turns because it holds my attention for longer.
I agree. Same here. Being that it's based on a book, it has an end to it. Some television series start off with saying, here's a limited series. It has a beginning and an end. We're not going to have a season two or a spinoff. Are you thinking along those lines, or you're hoping that if it does pick up, that you'll have to, or not you, but whoever writes more uh, product to back up this story to continue on?
Yeah. So listen, like any good series, even the limited series that are really good, they'll find a way to do it again if it's popular.
Sure.
So we've decided that, like any good love story where soulmates could find each other or not, it can go on into other time and place, right? So it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And let's just say at the end, they die, right? But do they die or does the soul continue into another time and place? And that's where we have that option. So if you say the finite ending is, the characters find their demise, or do they? Right. And that's kind of the play on the reincarnation theme.
Yeah. So the story of the afterlife. Reincarnation is just one adaptation of the idea of an afterlife. And
Yeah.
your father, was your father interested in that sort of thing?
I don't believe so. I think he heard this story from a friend and he jotted it down because the story is about him essentially telling the story that he heard from his friend. So his friend was going off to war and he said, "Listen, before I go, I haven't told anybody this. I have to tell somebody because it's crazy. I can't even believe it myself. This woman I fell in love with through reading her journal, I finally found her reincarnated. And if something were to happen in war, I just want somebody to know." Right? So he jots the story down as well as he can remember it, which is the basis of the book. The series is called Slippin', at least the working title, because you never know, it could change. And it's more on a line with slipping through time, whether that means reincarnation, whether it means, the metaverse or quantum, or it means this time travel scenario
hmm
is not for us to say. But there's something out there that we may not really know. Are we slipping through different time zones? Are we slipping into a different, reincarnated state and growing? I don't know.
Okay.
And we even pose a lot of those questions like, do you find your soulmate in every lifetime? Probably not. And if you do you have to resolve stuff from a prior life, the karmatic stuff? And it's like, listen, you're my soulmate, but God, I got shit to resolve because
hmm
we are not getting seeing eye to eye. So, those types of things are omnipresent, and we find that love, hate being two sides of the same coin is a possibility, or sins of the father, and how you have to pay back for some of that karma.
Yeah. Yeah. We play with terms like soulmate. I've used it, but I don't actually believe that that's a thing. But when you're in love and you're talking to the person that you're with and you bring up things like that, and you talk about the soul, which I don't believe exists any more than it's just part of the brain, but I don't mind using words like that. Are you approaching this from that sort of secular view, or is there some sort of religious undertones here as well?
No, I don't think there's a religious undertone. What it is, when we look at the series and we look at this, so he reads about this woman. Marie is an actual person in history. Her name was Marie Bashkirtseff, and she wrote a journal between 14 and 24. She died at 24 of tuberculosis.
Hmm.
2 years after her death, the journal was published by her mom, and it became an international bestseller, right? So 70 years later, this guy picks up the book, he reads it, and he slowly finds himself being attracted to the author, Marie. And he reads it and reads it and reads it. And finally, he finds himself in love with her. And he thought, this is crazy. I'm in love with a person who's dead, right? And he realizes his own delusion of, falling for a dead woman, if you will. I mean, not in that narcoleptic sense, but um, he ends up feeling like he has found her reincarnated. Because actually, in her journal, she talks about reincarnation. And you know what? I didn't find love. I will find you in time. I will find you. He believes it's him that she's talking to. And eventually he finds a woman that he firmly believes she talks like her, she thinks like her, she answers the questions like her. She essentially is her reincarnated, and he believes it's her. And he has a very short time to spend with this woman on leave before he has to go back into the war. And that's where he tells my father the story. So whether it's a delusion that he believes in bestowed upon this woman or it's actual reincarnation, we never get the real truth about it. We just feel like it's a possibility.
It's a beautiful cover, I must say. There's the Eiffel Tower. There's a bird flying above. How did you come up with that cover?
I got a publisher, and I said, here's what I'm thinking. He had a very simple idea when he did the manuscript. It was a picture that was done through a friend of ours, with a woman in front of a mirror looking at herself, which Marie did a lot, the original Marie.
Okay.
And when I thought, okay, reincarnation, sometimes birds symbolize that.
Right.
All of this takes place in Paris, right? So that's where the Eiffel Tower comes in.
Hmm.
And he is an army guy, so I don't know if you can see on
Yeah,
there. He
I can
has
see
sort of
that he's definitely
armed look.
got that look. Yep.
And down at the bottom is a book, which is her journal. This love reborn from the pages of history.
Okay.
And since her journal was actually a historical bestseller, and the journal was what attracted him to her, that's where the book at the bottom comes in, that's where the Paris comes in, and that's where the bird comes in.
Yeah, for sure. Is this a period piece then?
Yes. Her life, Marie, was in the late 1800s. The book has our protagonist, his name is Jan. He's in the 1950s.
Okay.
And we've updated the series to the 1970s, where our protagonist is now Jonathan, who is he is on leave to the Vietnam War, and he goes back to the Vietnam War, which is where the issues will happen. And he
Okay.
has these premonitions,
Okay.
and our protagonist has this sort of OCD thing going on where he's trying to get to the number four, and that means the fourth dimension, time and space,
Okay.
right? He's
Yeah.
trying to find Marie in this fourth door, and
Cool.
he's constantly obsessed with the number four. We don't know why, but then we find out that there was something going on when he was a kid. They gave him electroshock therapy in order to get this psychosis out of him and normalize him, if you will. And it all comes back in his 20s when he reads this journal. And he remembers the thing he thought of as a kid, seeing this woman in a sanatorium, because Marie, in the real world, went to a sanatorium to be treated for tuberculosis. And at that time, it was akin to, a bit of torture.
Mm, okay. Wow. You spoke about time travel possibilities in any sequel. Is there any time travel going on in here besides the idea of reincarnation and he met someone and he believes what he believes? Is there time travel at all?
Yeah, that's where the title Slippin' comes in. Now
Okay.
there's a form, something called slippers, that feel that they've walked into a place and all of a sudden they're transported to a different time. I've been to this place before, and I swear to God it was this story. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? There are actually stories about that. So because we believe that this could be a psychosis of his, he's slipped through that time to see her and then find her. Either she's reincarnated, he's slipped, or maybe his own internal mental psychosis. We don't really answer the question, this is exactly what happened, but the questions are out there is this possible? Whether it's time travel, whether it's the metaverse and being a different time and place, or it's reincarnation, or souls hooking up or not hooking up. We explore those topics.
Okay. You said when you first read the manuscript, you couldn't put it down. You were amazed. Remind me, did your sister read it as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So
My sister read it first.
your sister, then you handed it off to an associate of yours, and he was supposed to get back to you, give me a couple of months. I'm really busy, but a few days later, he's calling you up going, "This is incredible." The reason I'm
Yeah.
saying this is because stories like this can get very convoluted and bogged down with, the strange details. Doesn't sound to me that that's the case. Is it written in a very easy to understand way?
Yeah. The book is very short and linear, meaning it starts out where dad says, listen, a friend of mine came, we met at a train station, and he told me this story, and I'm going to repeat it as
Oh,
close
okay.
as possible to what he said.
Cool.
You could literally read the thing in a couple of hours. So it's a very linear read about one guy falling in love with a woman and his passion for her and his finding her reincarnation. Now,
Excellent.
that's a sim and the reason it's so emotional is because you feel the passion, you feel the little tear of, wait a second, I've lost my mind. I've fallen in, I went to her grave and I realized, oh my God, she's dead. What am I doing?
Hmm.
Right. And then finding the woman, and she answers like Marie had written her answers, the music that Marie had liked, the art that Marie had liked, the food, everything was essentially Marie, but with this new woman, Maria. And that's Marie's name in Russian. She was a Russian. And so we use that at the end there. It's a very bittersweet ending, and I was in tears, right?
Hmm.
And so we use that as the basis for the series and go far deeper into, okay, who is Jonathan in relation to Marie, and who are the other people in their lives that were in a previous life? Do they relate? Right?
Yeah.
Are they intertwined?
Okay. So how much of your time is being taken from the other things that you do in order to promote this book and to get the television series up and running? It must keep you very busy.
Well, yeah, I wish I could say it's keeping me more busy. I mean, I gave up the book for 4 decades because, I ran a couple of companies. I just sold my tech company. And I figured now that I've sold it and I can do what I want, knowing that, not everybody makes money in the movie business or even in publishing. I get that.
Yeah.
It's a passion project. So, I'm 64 and it's a retirement passion as well.
Hmm.
So the time is really, I get the writer to write it and I wait around until he gives me the first draft and I make my, comments. And so that's it. Now it's, trying to get awareness for the book and then going to a limited group of showrunners
Hmm.
that we say have done similar type shows, genres that are either historical fiction or paranormal romance,
Right.
and say, listen, you've done something like this before, like The Outlander, for
Yeah.
example. And as a result, we think this would be a great project that you could relate to. And we love to work together to try to bring this and put a package together, the director and the cast. And then you go to the streamers and you say, here are all the elements, here's the budget, here's the people, and yes or no, right?
Sure.
And now there is a niche audience that has a passion for these things.
What's the climate like now for television series productions, being that we have Comcast, Apple TV, and a whole host of different ways to watch television?
Well, several years ago, it was an arms race and money was being thrown out at anybody with a decent idea and they would go crazy. And recently, production's down 40%. The unemployment in Hollywood, California is over 12%.
Okay.
And people realize it's not economically feasible to continue throwing money at projects if I'm not making money. So
Yeah.
I think they're slowing down on the production. One, they're going to other countries either to produce or to buy their content because it's more cost effective. Two, they may going they may be going to a lot of B, like you can tune on Netflix, like you say, and you see some great actors. Never heard of them, but they're really
Hmm.
good, right?
Yeah.
And so they're making decent money, but not like the Tom Cruise type money, right?
Yeah.
And so the the scariest part, as everything is slowed down for the reasons economically, is AI, right? Not just the writing, but now text to video possibilities,
Yeah.
right? I think that scares the crap out of a lot of people in Hollywood because it's not a matter of if it's coming, but when it's coming. Because if it takes, a full day of production and a lot of money to do 2 minutes of finished film in a movie, then you look around and you say, okay, how much will it cost to do that with AI, with AI? A fraction of the cost, right? You say, I want a guy that looks like a cross between John Christian and Henry Woodman. Good looking guy, right? And AI will do that, right? And you say, this is what the background looks like, and this is where the location is, and this is the acting, and then this is the expression. I mean, we've all seen animated films, and it tugs at our heartstrings. The emotions are there.
I
So
guess so.
why not a full feature AI with humans looking, I mean, with people looking like humans,
Well,
right?
it would be novel for sure. People would go just to see it for that reason alone. I know in Japan they started using a couple of decades ago, rather than having news anchors, just have an AI person that never ages. And when you get tired of that look, just change the look. You don't have to pay them.
It's
So
like The Simpsons, they never age.
yes, right. And AI is such a generic, such a general term, right? I'm not even sure how that would work. AI
Well, I
still
think
baffles me.
Yeah, I think, like you say at the beginning, it's going to be a little bit of resistance and novelty. I will say, look, I'll watch something just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
But then we cross the threshold and it becomes more normalized. I mean, Lionsgate just recently said that it will allow certain writings and things with AI, right?
Hmm.
So the floodgates are already open, right? Nobody's able to say no because of the economics, right? Money talks. And if
Hmm.
you say, listen, I can create some cool little genre pieces that people will like, and I'll use AI and it's going to cost you a fraction of the cost, and then people watch it because I've got the data on that, I'm going to buy more,
Yeah.
right? So I think once we cross the threshold from curiosity and novelty to accepted, then it becomes a new world.
Hmm. AI has been controversial in the campaigning in the US elections. Either people are using AI or claiming that others are using it when they're not. And it becomes a little bit, I don't want to name names. You must know the stories as well. So when AI gets into that field, serious things, not just books of entertainment, which fine, if you want your book written by AI, knock yourself up. People may want to read it. I don't know. But when it gets into serious things like politics, it can become
Damage.
unscrupulous and even dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that we've turned the corner of got we've gotten so we accepting of lies and bullshit, and you don't even know what the truth is anymore because people just kind of tell these things like it's all truth, and
It's
it's
wild.
not.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely wild.
it's tough.
So this was written more than 40 years ago. Has it been re-edited, changed in any way?
Not a word. What I did was I took his original manuscript and I typed it into a Word document. And then I had somebody review that I didn't make any mistakes, which I'm sure I did. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to. And they said, would you want me to edit it and clean it up? I said, not at all. I want it just the way it was written because it was such a passionate power piece for me that I didn't want to change a word. So,
Okay.
some people will say, well, it's the wording, it's the way it was written. I don't know when he wrote it, but I know I read it a little over 40 years ago.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
was I was 23.
Well, your father was a writer.
Yes,
Did he do his own editing?
he did. He wrote on a typewriter And he, it was on manuscript. It was on 8 by 10 typewritten manuscript
Okay.
when I first read it.
And when was it published?
In end of June of this year, 2024.
Okay.
So a couple of months ago.
And as you said, no one gets really, well, very few people get wealthy on writing a book. What's sales like for you?
I don't even look. I mean, I know we've gotten close to 150 reviews already, so it's done fairly well.
Hmm.
I don't look so much at the sales. It's done really well. There's a couple hundred sales. I just get the numbers, and like I don't believe I'm ever going to make money on the book. That's not my intent, right?
Yeah.
My intent is to generate awareness because if you look at the recent Oscar nominations, many of them were from, ideas that came from books.
Hmm.
And I think that, instead of recycling the same old story over and over again, let's get a new idea. And this is a really fresh concept. I mean, who falls in love with an author only to find their reincarnation,
I
right?
know.
And we've gone with Slippin', we've gone far deeper into the intricacies of those lives.
Hmm. So that's the working title for your television series. And you're open to having that changed if it doesn't seem to work for people who want to invest.
Well, listen, Slippin' has a couple of meanings. It's the S is sliding off on its side that almost look like a closed infinity loop, right? So the
Oh, okay,
Slippin',
okay.
you get the idea. And
Yeah.
the Slippin' is slipping through time, and it also could be slipping into infinity. And it just has a great play on words. It's hard to find a good title that,
It is.
isn't already taken, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so when you say slippin', it doesn't necessarily tell unless you say, this is a guy who finds his soulmate, but she died 100 years earlier. What?
Hmm.
Huh?
Hmm.
How does that
Yeah,
happen?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Well, I hope it
yeah.
comes out because I want to watch it. How close are you to convincing enough investors to go ahead with this?
Well, it's not my interest in convincing investors. My job, really, as the owner of the IP and going, is I have a list of about 25 showrunners that I think would be good to attach to it. So I've met with a couple of people I know in the business, and I say, okay, let me get a little traction with the book, which is what we're doing now. And then let's get to these showrunners and send them the book, right? And send them the pilot and what we call the pitch deck. This is what it looks
Yep.
like.
Yep.
And so if they're interested, then we take the conversation to the next level. We then work up a contract or an agreement with them that they try to bring it to life. I have no interest because it's not my wheelhouse to go
Hmm.
and produce anything, but there are other people who do that well
Hmm.
and have them, bring it, put the package together and directors and talent and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. You keep mentioning pilot. Does that mean you've actually got one?
We've written a pilot, and
Oh,
I'm
you've
sorry,
written it. Okay.
talking about timeline. So production. So the timeline
To
can
some
be
degree.
anywhere, we get into a pre-production deal in a couple of months or a couple of years. And there is, in my world, there's no rush. I don't need this to pay bills and oh my God, I got to sell this or I'm going to
Yeah.
starve.
Yeah.
I want to do it right. And since the market, like many businesses, is cyclical, right? This is a downtime. It may take a year or two for that to come back and people to come and sort of regroup, if you will, or companies might merge
Hmm.
and get stronger, and then budgets come up and there's other
Yeah,
needs.
that's right. Sure. Yeah. So it's usually around this time that I would ask an author, which apparently you're not, if you have any plans on writing a second book. Do you have any plans on writing any kind of book?
No, I have to tell you, my dad was a great writer. My brother is a great writer, and he wrote a
Okay.
book. And I don't think I could do, maybe with, AI helping me, I could be a good writer, but
Okay. Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
my interest. Years ago, I wrote a self-serving book, like how to sell content on the internet. It was promoting my company just so I could get gigs as a speaker. It was a horrible, not, it wasn't horrible. It was a book that essentially was what it was. It
Yeah.
talked about various things. So I don't think I can write, do justice to the writing. So I don't think I would write
Okay.
another book
Well, maybe you
or
can
a
have
book at all.
Have your brother contact me. I'd be curious to hear what he's been
Yeah,
writing.
yeah,
But
he's
I'll tell you this. One of the most entertaining guests that I've had on the show wrote a book on how to buy an RV, recreational vehicle. And when he contacted me, I said, "Oh, okay, sure, we'll have you on." I go, What are we going to talk about?" Okay, you buy a recreational vehicle, you look for this, that, the other thing. But he had this style about him that was just so entertaining. I got a lot of comments from people watching that going, I never thought that, a book on how to buy recreational vehicles is so much fun and interesting, but this guy made it so.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would never have thought that either. I would
Yeah.
go on and say, what things do I want?
Yeah.
Gas mileage or,
Yeah.
some star rating or something. Wow.
He was
You never
so
know.
passionate about it that it was just oozing off of him. It was wonderful. It's a great
Well, good
conversation.
for him.
Now you have a website. What can we see there?
So on the website is mariethestory.com, and it shows obviously the book and where to buy it, places. It shows an overview of my father as the author and him with his typewriter, back in the day. And it has some blurb on Slippin', the development of the TV series. And it also has obviously, links to um, LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram pages that feature what I'm doing and what I'm talking about if they want more
Okay.
instant gratification.
Okay. Does this come in hardcover, paperback, and ebook as well?
It comes in paperback and ebook, and there is an audiobook.
Okay.
What happened was when I said to the publisher, I said, listen, I'm lazy. I don't like reading stuff, but I love books. So I listen to them all
Yeah.
the time. Do I need to get a voice talent for this? And she says, why don't you do it? You've got a great voice. And I said, yeah, I don't want to sit there for a couple of days and read a book. And she goes, no, no, come on. It's a tribute to your dad. I'm like, all right, all right, all right, all right, fine. So there is an audiobook with my voice, and then there's music transitions, some Chopin piano that is done by my nephew, his grandson. So there are three generations in the audiobook, one that
Nice.
wrote it, one that voices it, and one that does the music transitions as a pianist. And he's really good.
Wow.
He's a kid. Yeah,
Nice. Really nice.
yeah,
That's a
yeah.
great thing. And how long did it take you to read all that?
Couple of days.
And then editing it and
It's a
stuff?
3 hour read, but reading it and going, oh, wait, I screwed that up. Or, the guy says, you popped it. Let's read this again. And then,
Yeah.
in an audio studio. So it took me about 2 days.
Yeah. Any last words you want to say about your father's book and the hopefully upcoming series?
It's funny, John, because my friends that I know, I said, listen, you got to read this. And I'm like, Henry, I read leadership and business books. Really? I'm like, come on. I kid you not. Every single one that has read it calls me back. I loved it. I
Wonderful.
cannot believe this is so uncharacteristic of me to read this type of
Oh,
book. It was
perfect.
awesome. And then they give it to their wife. Or, what's funny is I recently had physical therapy, and the physical therapist bought one for his mom for her birthday.
Oh,
And she loved it. And then he says, oh, good. Can I get it back and read it? She goes, no, I'm going to give it to grandma. She'll like it. So
right.
it's done well with the people who have picked it up. So hopefully you'll pick it up.
Absolutely. I mean, even the cover, you see the man and the woman and the bird. If you're into romance, and a lot of people are, they're going to say, okay, this appeals to me. Paris,
Yep.
Eiffel Tower. Absolutely. Wonderful.
And and true life, historical fiction too.
Yeah,
There's
that too.
some,
That
yeah.
too. That too. Well, Henry, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. And I'd have you back on the show if you ever get that series going, and maybe
Yeah, oh, I
we can
will.
talk about
I
that.
will.
Or your
I,
brother could contact me if he wants to be on the show.
absolutely. I
Okay.
appreciate it. Thanks, John.
All right. Well, you take care of yourself now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, and if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then I invite you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment if you wish. And if you are an author, I would sure love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing, and remember to be kind to one another.